The mop slipped from his hands, water splashing across the polished floor. Laughter echoed around the break room as four men leaned against the counter, watching him bend down. "Yo, rookie, missed a spot," one of them jeered. He pointed at a dark stain spreading across the tile. The new guy gritted his teeth, pressing the mop hard. He felt the sting in his back, not from the scrubbing but from the weight of their eyes, their smirks, the way they wanted him small. He had been called many things in his life, but rookie was new. Careful now. Another voice chimed in, sharp with fake concern. "Don't want you slipping on that coffee, man. Wouldn't want the company to lose its newest janitor." The group laughed harder. His hands trembled, slightly on the mop handle. On the outside, he kept calm, a quiet figure with tired eyes. Inside, a storm churned. If only they knew. The man kneeling on the floor was not a rookie. He was not a temp, not an intern, not someone begging for a chance. He was the CEO, the man who signed their checks, the man whose name was printed on the glass at the top of the building they worked in. But he stayed silent, pressing the mop against the floor, every stroke recording a memory. Every insult sinking deeper into a file he was building in his mind. Because today, he was not their CEO. Today he was just the new guy. One of the men strolled past, deliberately stepping in the wet area. His shoe left a messy print. He dragged it slowly, making the streak wider. "Oops," he said, shrugging. "Guess you better clean that up too." The others cracked up. The rookie didn't flinch. He stared at the dirty streak, then at the man's smug grin. In his chest, his heart hammered hard enough to hurt. He wondered how long he could hold it together. The room smelled of burnt coffee and disinfectant. He could hear the hum of the vending machine and the crunch of chips in one man's mouth. The world was so ordinary, yet the humiliation felt larger than life, like a spotlight shining on his bent back. This was the first day. His first test? He looked up at the men, their laughter bouncing against the walls. He forced a smile that never reached his eyes. "Sure thing," he said softly. His voice was even, steady, almost too calm. He bent again, sliding the mop over the floor until the streak disappeared. The men got bored after a while, tossing their chip bags in the trash and heading out, still chuckling. One of them slapped him on the back harder than necessary, as if to remind him of his place. When the door swung shut and the room fell quiet, the new guy leaned on the mop and exhaled slowly. His jaw ached from how hard he had been clenching it. His palms were damp with sweat, but his eyes, dark and sharp, burned with a different fire. They thought they had broken him, but in reality, they had written their own fate. His real name was Marcus Jordan, though nobody here knew it. On paper, he was the new administrative assistant, hired just last week through a third-party recruiter. In reality, Marcus was the founder, owner, and CEO of the very company whose halls he now walked unnoticed. He had built this empire from nothing. Years of late nights, skipped meals, and endless rejection had sharpened him. People saw the tailored suits and the glossy magazine covers now, but they didn't know about the 10 years he had spent sleeping on couches, teaching himself business from second-hand books, and grinding through jobs where he was treated exactly like this. It was not nostalgia that brought him undercover. It was necessity. Whispers had reached him over the past 6 months. Reports of a toxic department buried inside his company. Anonymous complaints about bullying, discrimination, and hazing. He had seen too many leaders ignore such signs until the culture rotted from the inside. He refused to be one of them. So, he decided to see it for himself. He shaved his beard, ditched the tailored suits, and dressed like a man trying to climb his way in. He let his natural hair grow out and wore a plain button-up with scuffed shoes. Nobody recognized him without the polish. That was the beauty of it. Now here he was, crouched over a mop, taking insults from men who didn't know their paychecks, were signed by the very man they mocked. As he walked out of the break room that day, his mind replayed their words. Rookie, janitor, nobody. The sting was real, but it wasn't unfamiliar. Marcus had faced that tone his whole life. The tone that said you don't belong here. the tone that tried to shrink him before he had the chance to stand tall. This undercover mission was supposed to last 2 weeks. He had told only one person, his chief of staff, who was sworn to secrecy. If the truth leaked, the experiment would fail. He needed unfiltered reality, not performative politeness. He walked down the hallway carrying a stack of papers they had dumped on him earlier. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, reflecting off the glossy posters that celebrated teamwork and integrity. The irony was bitter. A woman from another department passed him and gave a polite nod. Marcus nodded back, noticing how different her energy was compared to the group that had cornered him. Not everyone here was rotten. That gave him hope. Still, the question clawed at him. How deep did this rot go? Was it just a handful of toxic employees, or was it a culture his managers had allowed to spread? He would find out. For now, he kept his head down, his ears open, and his mind sharp. Every word, every smirk, every insult was a puzzle piece, and when the picture was complete, he would put it on display for everyone to see. Because Marcus Jordan wasn't just here to survive the hazing, he was here to end it. By mid-afternoon, Marcus had already been sent on 3 pointless errands. First, it was to the other side of the building to fetch printouts that could have been emailed. Then it was running down to the supply closet in the basement for folders nobody actually needed. And now he stood at his desk staring at the pile of documents they had dumped there, each one marked with sticky notes scribbled in messy handwriting. "Make copies of all these, rookie," one of the men said. His name was Brad, a mid-level manager with slicked-back hair and a smirk that never seemed to leave his face. Double-sided, stapled, sorted by color. "Oh, and I need it done in an hour." Marcus glanced at the stack. It was hundreds of pages, scattered and unorganized. He knew the task was designed to fail. Another man, a tall one named Kevin, leaned over his cubicle wall. "Don't screw it up, rookie. First impressions matter." The others laughed again, their voices carrying down the row of cubicles. A few employees glanced up from their own desks, curious but silent. Nobody spoke up. Marcus picked up the stack and carried it toward the copy room. His shoulders were straight, his pace steady, but inside a fire burned. He placed the papers in the tray, the machine whirring to life. As the pages fed through, he heard footsteps behind him. Kevin appeared. In the doorway, arms crossed. "You know," Kevin said casually, "you might not last here. A lot of people quit after the first week. Too much pressure." Marcus kept his eyes on the machine. "I can handle pressure." Kevin smirked. "We'll see." He left without another word. By the time Marcus returned to his desk, carrying neatly stapled stacks, Brad pretended to yawn. "Wow, took you long enough. What, did you have to learn how to use the machine?" The others chuckled. Marcus set the papers down calmly. "They're all sorted," he said evenly. Brad rifled through the stack, pretending to inspect. Then, with exaggerated sloppiness, he dropped them on the floor. Papers scattered everywhere. "Oops," he said, grinning. "Guess you'll have to pick that up." The men roared with laughter again. Marcus crouched silently, gathering the papers one by one. His fingers pressed hard against the pages, knuckles white. He could feel every eye in the office. On him, some were entertained, some were uncomfortable, but none intervened. When he stood again, Brad leaned close. "Lesson 1, rookie. Around here, you earn respect. And right now, you haven't earned a thing." Marcus locked eyes with him for a brief second. His face was calm, unreadable. But in his silence, there was power. Brad didn't see it. The rest of the day continued in the same rhythm. Pointless tasks, snide comments, backhanded jokes. At one point, someone placed an empty coffee cup on his desk and said, "Hey, rookie, be a pal and fill this up." Marcus took the cup without a word. Every insult, every laugh, every shove was a brick in a wall they were building around him. But what they didn't realize was that he was taking notes. Quietly, carefully, he was recording their every word, their every sneer. By the time 5 o'clock rolled around, his body was sore, his mind buzzing with anger. He walked to the elevator, listening to the men slap each other on the back, congratulating themselves on another Initiation. They thought they were untouchable. They had no idea who they had just mocked, tested, and humiliated. That night, Marcus sat in his car in the parking garage, hands gripping the steering wheel. The hum of the engine echoed in the dim space. He hadn't turned on the radio. He didn't want music. He wanted silence. His reflection stared back at him in the rearview mirror. Without the beard, without the suit, he almost didn't recognize himself. He looked like a tired man in his 30s, another worker who had given too much to a job that gave too little back. He thought about his mother. She had raised him with nothing but grit and prayer, reminding him that every battle had purpose. He remembered her words when he was younger, after he came home in tears from being mocked at school. They see your skin before they see your soul. You make them see your soul, Marcus. He closed his eyes. The cruelty he had faced today wasn't new. It was a cycle. He had endured it as a boy in classrooms, as a teenager in part-time jobs, as a young man trying to break into boardrooms, where no one looked like him. And now, even as a CEO, even as the man at the top, he was back in that same position. The lowest rung. The target. He let the ache sit in his chest for a while. For the first time since starting this undercover mission, he doubted himself. Could he endure 2 full weeks of this? Could he stand by and swallow the disrespect without revealing the truth too soon? His hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel. He exhaled, long and heavy. Then he remembered why he was here. This wasn't about him. It was about the people who had written complaints, who had cried in bathrooms, who had gone home every night with their dignity shattered. It was about the young hires who deserved better than to be bullied out of their chance to grow. Marcus opened his eyes. The doubt was still there, but behind it was steel. He straightened in his seat, turned the key, and started the car. Tomorrow, he told himself, he would go back. Tomorrow, he would endure whatever they threw at him. Tomorrow, he would gather more proof. Because the only way to change the culture was to face it head on. And when the time came when the evidence was undeniable, he would show them all who he truly was. The second day began with false smiles. Brad strolled into the office late, sunglasses perched on his head. He dropped his bag on the desk and looked straight at Marcus. "Morning, rookie. Hope you got some rest because we've got a fun day planned for you." The others grinned like they were in on the joke. By mid-morning, the fun revealed itself. "Rookie, run downstairs and get us lunch orders," Kevin said, waving a list scribbled on a napkin. "Sub shop, 2 blocks down. Oh, and make sure the bread's toasted. If it ain't toasted, don't bother coming back." Another man snickered. "Better hurry, we're starving." Marcus took the napkin and walked toward the elevator. Outside, the sun blazed, the sidewalk thick with people. He joined the lunch line, ordered exactly as written, and hurried back. By the time he returned, sweat dampened his shirt. He placed the bags neatly on the table. Brad rummaged through one, pulled out a sandwich, and frowned. "Did I say mustard?" "That's what was on the order," Marcus said. Brad held the sandwich up like it was rotten. "I hate mustard. Guess you screwed this up." He tossed it in the trash without hesitation. "Better pay attention next time, rookie." The room erupted in laughter again. Marcus stood still, jaw tight, watching the sandwich sink into the bin. He thought of the $10 wasted, the careless cruelty in that simple toss. He bit his tongue until he tasted iron. Later that afternoon, they escalated. Brad called him into a meeting room. Inside were 3 of the men and a whiteboard filled with numbers. "We're going to need you to run the reports on this," Brad said. By tonight, Marcus scanned the board. The data was vague, incomplete, and contradictory. It wasn't a real project. It was a trap. He looked up. "Can I get the source files?" Brad smirked. "Oh, you'll figure it out." The others chuckled, shaking their heads like teachers mocking a clueless student. Marcus stayed late, staring at the meaningless numbers, piecing together fragments from different files. By 9 o'clock, the office was empty. He closed his laptop, exhaustion weighing on his shoulders. As he walked out, he passed the break room. On the counter sat a small cake with his name scrawled in icing. "Welcome, rookie." For a moment, His chest warmed. Had someone kind been watching out for him? He stepped closer, only to see the rest of the writing. Hope you survive. The laughter in his memory returned, echoing even though the room was empty. He stood there in the dim light, staring at the cake. His stomach twisted. It wasn't a welcome. It was a warning. The next morning, the betrayal came. Brad pulled Marcus aside. "Hey, rookie, we told the director you'd be presenting the report you worked on. Big meeting, lots of eyes. Don't choke." Marcus froze. Present? He hadn't been given any real data. The whole thing had been designed to fail. He walked into the boardroom hours later, heart steady but mind sharp. The director, a stern woman with glasses perched on her nose, sat at the head of the table. The toxic crew sat off to the side, grinning like hyenas waiting for blood. Marcus stood, opened his folder and began. He spoke clearly, walking through the incomplete data as best he could. He explained the gaps, the contradictions, the missing files. He highlighted what conclusions could be drawn, careful not to fabricate. The director's brow furrowed. "Why didn't you have the complete data set?" Marcus swallowed. "I was not given access." The room went silent. Brad leaned forward, with mock concern. "We gave him everything, ma'am. Must have been rookie nerves," Kevin chimed in. "Yeah, he's still green. Don't be too hard on him." The others chuckled. Marcus stood frozen, rage coursing through him. They had set him up to fail, then lied openly. He wanted to rip off the mask right there to expose them, but he forced himself to breathe. The director sighed. "All right, rookie, go back and finish it properly next time." Brad shot him a smug wink as the meeting ended. Marcus walked out, each step heavy. He had taken humiliation after humiliation, but this one dug deep. Not because they mocked him, because they had lied about him. Betrayal cut sharper than cruelty. He clenched his fists as he returned to his desk. Enough was enough. That night, Marcus didn't go straight home. He drove to an electronics store and bought a small recorder no bigger than his thumb. He tested it in the car, his voice whispering into the device, the playback crisp and clear. The next morning, he slid it into his pocket before walking into the office. When Brad barked orders, the recorder captured every word. When Kevin muttered a racial joke under his breath, it caught the tone, the laughter that followed. When they lied in another meeting, twisting the story to make Marcus look incompetent, the device held the truth. Marcus kept his face calm, his tone even. He nodded when they mocked him, obeyed when they pushed busy work his way. But inside, he was no longer a victim. He was a witness. At night, he transferred the files to a private drive. Hours of recordings, crystal clear evidence. He also began keeping a journal. Every incident, every insult, every trap. Times, dates, names. The file grew thicker with each day. One evening, he sat in his apartment listening to the playback. Kevin's voice rang out, laughing. "Man, rookie's so slow, no wonder he's stuck here. Bet he's never even been in a real office before." Another voice chimed in, crueler. "Rookie looks like he should be pushing a broom, not pushing." "Ports." Marcus closed his eyes. He let the words sink in, not to wound him, but to harden his resolve. This was no longer just hazing. It was targeted humiliation, a culture of cruelty. And when the truth came out, it would not be their word against his. It would be their word against themselves. Marcus leaned back, the glow of the laptop reflecting in his eyes. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't desperate. He was patient. Every insult they threw was another nail in their coffin. The day of reckoning was coming, and when it arrived, it would be public. The email came on a Thursday morning. All hands meeting, mandatory attendance, 3 p.m. in the main auditorium. The announcement buzzed through the building. People whispered in hallways, speculating about what big news was coming. Promotions? Layoffs? A merger? Nobody knew. Marcus sat quietly at his desk, stacking papers, his recorder still in his pocket. He already knew what was coming. He had asked his chief of staff to schedule this meeting. It was time. At 3 o'clock, the auditorium filled with employees. The toxic crew sat together near the front, relaxed and joking. Brad leaned back in his chair, tapping his phone, not paying attention. The director stood at the podium first, adjusting the mic. "We have an important announcement. A very special guest will be speaking today." Murmurs spread. Who was it? Then the doors opened. Marcus walked in. But this time, he was not in his wrinkled shirt and scuffed shoes. He wore a sharp black suit, tailored perfectly to his frame. His hair was trimmed clean, his posture was straight, confident, commanding. The rookie was gone. The man walking down the aisle was unmistakably someone powerful. The room went silent. The toxic crew straightened in their seats, confusion flickering across their faces. Kevin whispered something under his breath. Brad squinted, trying to make sense of it. Marcus reached the stage, took the microphone, and let his eyes sweep the room. "My name is Marcus Jordan," he said, his voice deep and steady. "I am the founder and CEO of this company." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Heads turned, mouths opened. The toxic crew sat frozen, their smirks wiped clean. Marcus let the silence linger before continuing. "For the past 2 weeks, I have been working here undercover. Not as your CEO, not as your boss, but as one of you, a new hire, an outsider. I wanted to see what kind of culture we have built in this company. I wanted to see how people are treated when they have no title, no power, no protection." He paused, his gaze hardening. "What I found disturbed me." The audience leaned forward. Marcus pulled a small device from his pocket and placed it on the podium. "I recorded my experiences. Every word, every insult, every lie." He pressed play. Kevin's voice rang through the speakers, mocking. "Rookie. Looks like he should be pushing a broom, not pushing reports." Gasps erupted. People shifted in their seats. Next, Brad's voice filled the room. "Lesson 1, rookie. Around here you earn respect, and right now you haven't earned a thing." The crowd murmured louder. Faces turned toward Brad, eyes sharp with disbelief. Marcus pressed again. Laughter echoed, followed by another cruel remark. The words were undeniable. "This is how your colleagues speak when they think no one is listening," Marcus said. "This is how they treat someone they believe is powerless." Brad's face turned red. Kevin looked pale. The others avoided eye contact. Marcus leaned closer to the microphone. His voice dropped lower, heavier. "They lied in meetings. They sabotaged work. They mocked race, background, and dignity. And they did it with pride." He let the silence sit heavy before delivering the blow. "In this company, we don't tolerate abuse. We don't tolerate hazing. And we don't tolerate cruelty disguised as culture. That ends today." The room buzzed with tension, every eye fixed on Marcus. He turned his gaze to the front row, locking eyes with Brad and the others. "You 4, Marcus said slowly. "Stand up." Brad hesitated, then pushed himself up, his smirk completely gone. Kevin followed reluctantly. The others rose, stiff and uneasy. Marcus pointed toward the exit doors. "You are dismissed, effective immediately. Security will escort you out. Your access is revoked, your contracts are terminated." The audience erupted. Some gasped, others clapped quietly, a few even cheered. Brad sputtered. You can't." "Be serious. This is a joke, right?" Marcus's eyes were cold. "You thought this was a game, but this is people's lives, their dignity, their future, and you spat on it. I don't play games with people's humanity." Kevin tried to speak. "We were just messing around. It wasn't serious," Marcus cut him off. "Humiliation is never just a joke. Disrespect is never just a prank. And your words prove exactly who you are when you think no one is watching." Security approached. The men's protests turned to mutters, then silence as they were led out of the auditorium. Their seats sat empty, glaring reminders of arrogance undone. Marcus turned back to the crowd. His voice softened but carried even stronger weight. "Those of you who treated me with respect when I was just the rookie, thank you. To those who turned a blind eye, I hope you remember this moment. And to anyone suffering in silence because of toxic coworkers, know that you are seen. The room was utterly silent, hanging on every word. This company will not be defined by cruelty. It will be defined by accountability, by respect, by excellence. That begins today. Applause broke out, growing louder until the entire room was on its feet. Some employees clapped with relief, some with pride, some with tears in their eyes. Marcus stood tall, letting the moment wash over him, not as the rookie, not as the target, but as the leader who had faced their cruelty and turned it into justice. The toxic crew was gone, the culture was changing, and the message was clear. Respect is not optional. The building felt different the next morning. No more cruel laughter in the break room. No more rookie jokes. The air was lighter, like the whole company had been reset overnight. Within a month, the numbers told the story. Complaints dropped by, more than half. Productivity jumped. New hires weren't quitting after a week, they were thriving. Word spread outside, too. Job applications doubled because people wanted to work where respect was real. The toxic crew? Forgotten as quickly as they were removed. Their empty desks were filled with people ready to build, not break. But the real victory wasn't in the stats. It was in the faces. Employees who once kept their heads down now spoke up. Break rooms filled with real laughter, not cruelty. For the first time, people felt proud of where they worked. Marcus didn't just fire a few bullies. He changed the culture. He proved that respect is power. And the lesson? Never underestimate the rookie, because the person you mock today might be the one who decides your tomorrow. If you've ever faced a toxic workplace, this story is for you. And if you believe in holding power accountable, then let's keep stories like this alive. So tell me, what would you have done in Marcus's place? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Smash that like button if this story hit you, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories that need to be told. Respect always wins.